Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the National Museum of the American Indian. My name is José Barreiro. I am Assistant Director for History and Cultural Research and Director of the Office of Latin America here. As moderator today, for today's program, I welcome you to Engineering the Inca Empire, a symposium on sustainability and ancient technologies. As Ken Wright, one of our distinguished guests today, pointed out to me a little bit ago, the red light apparently is having trouble this morning, and he said, well, it's not nearly as reliable as the Inca Road. This symposium presents a grand example of the fascinating genius of indigenous America. American indigenous knowledge and achievement as exemplified by the Inca of the South American Andes, their empire, their 40,000 kilometers of road, organization, and construction that articulated it, integrating the four major sujos or regions of the empire. Today, on the principles and practices of Inca engineering, we welcome some terrific and very distinguished minds. It will be my privilege to introduce most of them. I would like to thank the Smithsonian Latino Center for co-sponsoring this symposium and the Smithsonian Consortium for World Cultures for its generous support. We are honored today by the presence of Smithsonian Secretary Dr. Wayne Clough, who will give opening remarks. Before our formal program begins, just a few housekeeping details. Please, if you have a cell phone, take this opportunity to turn it off. We are recording the program. It is live streamed, and it will be later on our website as well and in YouTube. After our last presentation this afternoon, our speakers will return to the stage and we will have a question and answer session. So please hold your questions until then. I will be introducing our speakers briefly. However, you will find abstracts of their presentations and bios in your printed program. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Kevin Gover, Director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. A Princeton University graduate in public law and international affairs, Gover received his law degree from the University of New Mexico. A lawyer with many years of practice in Albuquerque and Washington, he is also a former professor of law at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University in Tempe, an affiliate professor in the university's American Indian Studies program, and co-executive director of its American Indian Policy Institute. From 1997 to 2000, in the Clinton administration, Gover served as Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs in the U.S. Department of the Interior. A presidential appointee, he was responsible for policy and operational oversight of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. This highest Indian policy post oversees national programs in Indian education, law enforcement, social services, treaty rights, and trust asset management. Please help me welcome Kevin Gover.
Good morning. I would also like to welcome you to the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. This is an interesting upcoming year for us. We have, the museum was established by the Congress in 1989, which makes 2014 the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the museum. So we're very excited about that. It also happens that next year will be the 20th anniversary of the opening of our museum in New York City, the George Gustav High Center, the 15th anniversary of the opening of our Cultural Resources Center in Suitland, Maryland, and the 10th anniversary of the opening of our museum here on the National Mall. So we plan to make a big deal of all that, and we invite all of you to join in the celebration next year. One of the things that a museum like this one must confront, particularly, or maybe not particularly, but certainly here in the United States, is that our visitors come to us not as blank slates, but having absorbed at least some information about the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, either through their formal education or through the popular culture here in the United States. Sadly, much of the information that they've received is wrong, and it is entirely incomplete. But one of the understandings that people have of the history of the Western Hemisphere and of our country here in the United States is that the Americas were a wilderness. And we try to confront that idea as often as possible, and that is much of the inspiration for our upcoming exhibition on the Great Inca Road, is to demonstrate that the Americas were not a wilderness, that civilization pre-existed the arrival of Europeans in the New World, and that they were in many ways a very thriving set of communities spread throughout the length and width of the Americas. Certainly the Incas are one of the primary examples of the achievements of the indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. Their knowledge, their understanding of their environment, their agriculture, and of course their engineering all remain infinitely interesting and instructive, particularly in a world that is grappling with some quite near existential challenges of sustainability. So we've always believed that there is knowledge to be gained from the examination of these indigenous cultures, and not simply for the sake of gathering knowledge, but for its application in our contemporary lives. So we welcome you all here today to this symposium, which is very much a part of that examination. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the Secretary of the Smithsonian. Dr. Wayne Clough comes to us from the Georgia Institute of Technology, where he earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees, and later a PhD from the University of California at Berkeley. Most tellingly, and Dr. Clough was good enough to join a group of us who visited Peru a couple of years ago and spent some time in the Sacred Valley in Cusco, went to Machu Picchu, of course, and all the places that one must go if you enter Inca country. And it was just an absolute pleasure having Wayne and his wife be there with us, and not just to examine what was, but to enjoy what is among the indigenous people who still live in and around the Sacred Valley. And I know Dr. Clough would certainly want you to know that he's a civil engineer, and so he takes a particular interest in the subject. And engineers are funny, you know, because they'll be looking at I'm more of an aesthete, I suppose, because I look at something and think, oh, that's just that, you know, the aesthetics of this are magnificent. He's looking at the engineering of these things and seeing the world in a different way. And so it's been a privilege and an honor to be working with him, and we welcome him here today. Please welcome Dr. Wayne Clough.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It really is an honor to be with you today, and I congratulate everybody who's participating. I wish I could stay. This is one of my favorite topics, and I can guarantee you that what I have to do, it would be a lot more fun to be here as opposed to doing what I have to do. But we're really here to obviously celebrate a culture and a people who built things that continue to impress us today, 500 years or 400 years after it largely disappeared after contact with Europeans. Now, as a practicing civil engineer for most of my life, I'm particularly pleased that today you'll explore the engineering and the built environment surrounding the Great Inca Road. Surely this is one of the most far-reaching infrastructure projects ever taken in human history. And I have to say, I also appreciate the fact that we don't talk about engineering a lot here at the Smithsonian because we're into other subjects, largely speaking. And when we do talk about engineering, it's usually in the context of a disaster, like a hurricane or an earthquake or a problem with a building project. So it's great to come to a place where we're going to talk about engineering in the best light. And so I appreciate you taking care of that for me. And this symposium, of course, will just whet our appetites for what is to come. And that is the exhibition on the Inca Road that will be mounted in 2015. And so many people here have continuously worked on this for a long time, including Amy Van Allen. We want to thank her, and José, who you just met, and Ramiro Matos, who are fabulous curators and scholars here in this museum who have worked diligently to do this work and to bring all of us into the knowledge that we need to know about these wonderful people. As Kevin mentioned, in 2011, I had the pleasure of traveling with him and Ramiro and José into Peru to firsthand see the works of the Inca. It was especially valuable to be there with José and Ramiro, who have deep roots in the country and know the culture thoroughly. And they were able to inform me much more than I would have been otherwise. Now, as Kevin mentioned, like all visitors, you have to make a stop at Machu Picchu. And like all visitors, I was amazed by its soaring setting, its elegant structures, the durability of its facilities in the face of heavy rains and earthquakes, the amazing positioning of its buildings and icons along astronomical lines. Because all of this speaks to a high level of engineering and execution in construction, much of which, of course, wasn't appreciated until relatively recently. It wasn't until 2006 that the American Society of Civil Engineers designated Machu Picchu as a world landmark for its great innovative aspects of engineering. But even before our visit to Machu Picchu, I saw the 500-year-old buildings and roads and streets in the Inca capital of Cusco that clearly looked as if they're going to last another 500 or 1,000 years. They're not going anywhere. Also speaking to the competency of the engineering. And we traveled through the Sacred Valley, where I realized that Machu Picchu was just one of dozens of religious shrines built high atop mountain peaks, whose shoulders are lined with successive levels of rock terraces rising high above the valley floor. These provide room for agriculture, and they control runoff into the valley. We visited the village of Shiratori at 13,000-foot elevation, where I met the people of the Llama, direct descendants of the Inca. Together with the people of the Llama, we walked on parts of the Inca Road and saw stations where Inca runners stopped and received nourishment between their long treks between stations. That road is not glamorous in this area, but it's still working, it's still highly visible, and I certainly enjoyed walking on it. We had the wondrous experience of participating in the procession of the Llama. And so a group of us followed about 50 or 100 Llama in front of us, walking in procession into the community. They did me the honor of giving me the title, the Great Chief of the Smithsonian. It's a title I treasure. As you may know, the way the chart of the Smithsonian is set up, I report to the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts. And so I had to tell him that I've been promoted above him, because he's just the chief, I'm the great chief. And it's a title, of course, I can use around here from time to time to remind my employees just how important I am. Well, of course, as we traveled through the Sacred Valley and we visited the people in Shiratori and we visited Machu Picchu, the constant, of course, is the Inca Road itself, a remarkable 20,000-mile network that reaches from Quito, Ecuador in the north to Santiago, Chile in the south, touching and reaching 5 modern countries. And here's a highway that had to be built in the tropical rainforest of the Amazon, deserts, and the high altitudes of the Andes. And the Inca did it. They didn't have access to iron or steel tools. They had no power tools, no wheeled vehicles. They only had llamas as pack animals, and they didn't have a written language. Now, if you picked an American engineer out off the street and said, let's go add to the interstate highway, and given them those parameters, I don't think you would have gotten much of a response at that point. But somehow the Inca did it, and they did it remarkably well because that road is still there in spite of these challenging environmental circumstances. They clearly were not only great engineers, but also master builders and administrators to be able to marshal the forces needed to build this highway in a relatively short period of time. This was built on the top of earlier roads, as many of our roads were built here in this country in many places, but the stone surface they used provided a durable surface and allowed water to drain and prevent erosion. Just as important, it was a causeway for commerce and culture. It was the information superhighway. That was where the runners delivered information and news, the information superhighway of its day. So seeing the great works of the Inca reminded me of the largely Eurocentric viewpoint that colored my engineering education when I went to Georgia Tech and Berkeley. It was essentially the same version that I used as a teacher for 35 years to transmit to my students. In retrospect, having seen what I saw, it would have been much more holistic to have included the knowledge of the Inca, as well as other great native civilizations like the Mayan Aztecs, who were also great builders. Generations of engineers, if they had gotten that viewpoint, could have learned about how to properly build drainage systems, design for earthquakes, build suspension bridges, and manage large projects that blend seamlessly with nature rather than stand apart from it. So we would have benefited that, and I hope that you will help inform this process in the future. Today in the United States, we finally come around to the Inca idea of sustainability, and we know it's important. But this is something the Inca did instinctively. When I was fortunate to be president of my alma mater at Georgia Tech, we made a commitment to capture every drop of water that fell on the campus and reuse it. Well, the Inca were experts at doing this. They were doing this 500 years ago, and we could have learned from them. I am proud of the fact that the last building that I was involved with at Georgia Tech as a learning commons is today a LEED Platinum building, and it has a buried 150-foot diameter cistern in front of it that you don't see that collects water, and it meets all the water needs of the building except for drinking water. I'd like to think the Inca will be pleased with this concept. Now here at the Smithsonian, we own 43,000 acres of land that we have to care for. And on that vast expanse, which is in many countries, not just in this country, are 356 facilities that total 12 million gross square feet. Many of these buildings, of course, are historic, and others are quite unique in what the functions are. Many of these activities in these buildings use substantial water, including museum air conditioning, and we, of course, have to keep that going all the time because of our collections, our National Zoo exhibit pools, garden irrigations. We have gardens in many places, and various other water features. Currently, we have more than $1 billion worth of construction underway, renovations and constructions at the institution. With this new construction, our goal is to incorporate sustainable approaches into all of our projects, including water management and much more. For example, on November the 5th this month, Phase 1 of the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center new Matthias Lab opened, which we hope also will be a LEED Platinum. It's a state-of-the-art facility that uses water in a way that would make the Inca proud. Wastewater is cleaned at an outside treatment plant and reused in toilets, gardens, fire suppression, and constructed wetlands around the facility. As Tuck Hines, the director of the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, has noted, the water will be cleaner than when it went into the building. Rainwater is also collected and stored in cisterns for reuse in the building and reuse for agricultural watering. At our National Zoo's American Trail exhibit, which is brand new, and I would encourage you if you have a chance to see it, it's amazing. We included permeable retaining walls that prevent soil erosion and permeable pavement so the water can go into the ground instead of rushing off into the sewers. We also included rain gardens to help manage stormwater drainage and installed a whole new under-drainage system that ensures that the pool for the seals and sea lions, which is unbelievably state-of-the-art, can rely on recycled water. Our new National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is a $500 million project at 14th and Constitution, on schedule to be open in 2015 or 2016 early, will use a large water reclamation system for both groundwater and stormwater, and in fact water that comes into the lower portion of the building by even leakage through the wall. We're taking advantage of that. Its very design was inspired, so this is a capacity that we're building into this new building. We hope it will be a gold LEEDs. And we shouldn't forget this beautiful building here, the National Museum of the American Indian, Its very design was inspired by water-carved rock formations, and the outdoor fountain and wetlands speak to the importance of water management, not just for the Smithsonian, but for all of us. And this building, incidentally, to Kevin's great credit and his staff's credit, was not a LEEDS building in the beginning, but by dint of a tremendous effort, it has received LEED Silver designation because of the work they're doing in recycling and water management. And so it was done after the fact. That's really hard to do, but I'm very proud of the folks here for doing that. So at the Smithsonian, though, of course, sustainability goes beyond buildings, and that's why one of our 4 grand challenges is understanding and sustaining a biodiverse planet. We know and appreciate that we can learn from the Inca and other peoples in our efforts to understand and sustain our planet. This includes initiatives that focus on long-term observation, something the Smithsonian does very well. We've been doing it for years in forests around the world, and now we're extending it to the oceans and the Tenenbaum Marine Observatories. This will be the first worldwide network of coastal ecological field sites to comprehensively understand how global changes like ocean warming, acidification, and rising sea levels are affecting marine biodiversity and humans. Where possible, we are incorporating indigenous knowledge into our observational methods. To the Inca, of course, the relationship between the people and the earth was just as important as their relationship with the water. And to us, earth matters too. And that's why the National Museum of African Art, just up the street, is displaying a wonderful exhibition. If you have a chance, I'd encourage you to see it, aptly titled, Earth Matters, Land as Material and Metaphor in the Arts of Africa. This exhibition explores the ways in which African artists view the earth, and they're very observant about nature, and indigenous African communities use the land upon which they live and work. I believe we still have much to learn from people like the Inca and other civilizations who made understanding and working with nature a way of life built on deep observations of the earth. And as we learn, part of our mission at the Smithsonian is to share that knowledge with others. We look forward to learning from you and the work you'll do at the symposium. And you can be assured that we will share your outcomes with the millions of people who come to visit the Smithsonian's museums, 30 million, over 31 million last year, and the hundreds of millions who are now visiting our digital sites and digital technology sites and learning from us that way. Kenneth Wright, who is your next speaker, was asked on a PBS program, the PBS program Nova, what his biggest challenge would have been if he had been an Inca engineer. He responded, I would spend a lot of time and effort on foundations and site preparation. That's close to my heart as a geotechnical engineer, because I knew I was building for the ages to make sure Machu Picchu would last forever. Here at the Smithsonian, we believe we're in the forever business as well. The Smithsonian and its priceless collections should be here for hundreds, if not thousands of years to come to inspire future people and generations. Each day we work with this understanding. It is a responsibility we take seriously. A proverb often attributed to Native Americans states, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. That sentiment is behind everything we do here at the Smithsonian. So I wish you much luck with your symposium. I'm going to stay for just a little while to hear the start of the program, and I very much look forward to the outcome from your results here. So thank you so much for participating, and I look forward to hearing more about what you've done later. Thank you.